This lesson is about the Pythagorean Theorem. The goal is to solve right angle problems using the Pythagorean Theorem. The standards are geometry, similarity, right triangles, and trig number 8, and geometry, similarity, right triangles, trig number 4. What you should understand by the end of this lesson is that if you know the lengths of any two sides of a right triangle, you can find the length of the third side by using the Pythagorean theorem. Now I know that many of you, well, really all of you, have done the Pythagorean theorem before, so I would not expect that any of you are at 1 or 2 on the scale before you even start. So I'm hoping that at the top of your notes that you are either going to write 3 that you understand the Pythagorean theorem, or 4 you're so good at it that you could teach it. But write down what number you're at, 1, 2, 3, or 4 at the top of your notes right now. The Pythagorean theorem states that if a triangle is a right triangle, then the sum of the squares, that means taking a number and multiplying it by itself, the squares of the length of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. So remember that the hypotenuse is never ever going to touch the right angle. It's always the line that does not touch the right angle. So the formula for the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right. This question says, what is the length of the hypotenuse? Okay, remember the hypotenuse is the side that does not touch the right angle. So I am going to square the sides, do a squared plus b squared, and then take the square root of that answer. Now it doesn't matter which one you use it as a and which one you use it b, but in my calculator I'm going to take 77 squared plus 36 squared. So the sum of those squares is 7,225. Now that's not the length of the hypotenuse. I would hope that most of you would realize there's no way it could be that. So what I do now is I'm going to take the square root of 7,225, and when I put that in, my answer is 85. So the length of the hypotenuse is 85 centimeters. Another way you can always kind of guess if you're getting the right answer is the hypotenuse will always be the longest side. 85 is the larger number, so it's right. Your first practice problem is, what is the length of the hypotenuse? The next problem we're going to look at, the question says, what is the perimeter? Not what is the length of one of the legs, the perimeter. Remember, the perimeter is when you add up all the sides. So the first thing I have to do is find what B is. Now to find the length of the leg, I'm going to take the hypotenuse squared minus the other leg squared. And then I'm going to find the square root of that answer. So the difference of those two squares is 46/24. Now when I take the square root of 46/24, I get 68. Now that's not my answer, that's just the length of the missing leg. So when I add them up, I would add up 85 plus 51 plus 68. And I get 204. So the answer to the question, what is the perimeter? The answer is 204 miles. So be very careful to read your question before you answer it. Practice 2. What is the perimeter? If necessary, round to the nearest tenth. That means you would have a number and you would have one decimal place. All right, so if you have more than one decimal place, look at the second decimal place. If it's less than 5, just drop them. If it's more than 5, round that first decimal place up one number. So be real careful when you're doing your rounding. The next kind of problems you're going to see are the ones you all love, I know, but they are word problems. On these, you really need to draw your right triangle and then read what they want you to find. Because if you don't, you're not going to know whether or not you need to find a leg, or you need to find the hypotenuse, or do you need to find the perimeter. So let's read the problem and then set it up. 2 cars leave the same parking lot. So I'm just going to write down here in the corner, here's my parking lot. And 2 cars are leaving. One is heading north, there's my northbound, and one is heading east. There's my eastbound. So there's north and there's east. After several minutes, the northbound car has traveled 5 miles. The eastbound car has traveled 3 miles. Measured in a straight line, how far apart are the 2 cars? So they want to know what the hypotenuse is. Okay, so now I know what they want. Now I know how to figure it out. And it says rounded to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to take 5 squared plus 3 squared, which gives me 34. When I find the square root of 34, when I round it to the nearest tenth, well, my calculator says 5.83 dot and a bunch of other numbers. Well, I noticed to the nearest tenth is the 8. Next to it is a 3, so I just drop it. So my answer to this problem, rounded to the nearest tenth, is 5.8 miles. That's how far apart those cars are. It's 5.8 miles. All right, your next 3 problems are all word problems. Again, draw your right triangle and decide what you need to find. Do you need to find a leg, the hypotenuse, or the perimeter? So here's the first one. The floor of a storage unit is 8 meters long and 8 meters wide. Starting at the far left corner, she walks down the length, across the width, and then diagonally back to the far left corner. How far does she walk? Well, it sounds to me like if she's walking 3 different lengths, you need to figure the perimeter, but you have to find that third side. So read the question, draw your picture, and then do your calculations. Practice 4. From a train station, one train heads north and another heads east. Sometime later, the northbound train has traveled 60 kilometers and the eastbound train has traveled 63 kilometers. How far apart are the 2 trains measured in a straight line? That sounds almost exactly like the practice problem I worked out, only mine was using cars. This one is using trains. And your last problem. 3 ballet dancers are positioned on stage. Miles is behind Elise and directly left of Benedicta. If Elise, or I don't know how to pronounce her name, and Miles are 2 feet apart, and Benedicta and the other person are 5.7 feet apart, what is the distance between Miles and Benedicta? If necessary, round to the nearest tenth. This one is tricky, so read it, draw your right triangle, and decide what they want. Do they want a leg or a hypotenuse? They definitely don't want the perimeter on this one. And be sure you show me your practice problem answers before you do the assignment. All right, where do you feel like you are after the video? Are you any better or just about the same? Or maybe how are you now on those word problems using the Pythagorean theorem? So at the end of your notes now, write where you are and where you feel you are now before you go to your assignment. You have one assignment on this lesson. You're going to do that. I'm only going to make you do, if you do somewhere between 10 and 15 problems, but I'm going to give you your actual grade. So if you do 10 problems and you miss 4, I'm not going to take a grade because that's only a 60. If you do 10 problems and you get them all right, you'll get the 100. Good luck. And happy days are here. That's all for this lesson. Bye.